Good evening, ladies and gents, and welcome to the latest instalment of the Cartfix Live. Obviously, as always, the main purpose of these is to interact with you, the member, and answer your questions. Anything kart fishing related, preferably sort of around the time of year that we're at, so it's sort of it's up to date and sort of good information for everyone else that's listening. Doesn't have to be about October as such, but can be about anything. Anything about upcoming films and whatnot. But perhaps Scott can start, because I know his recent vlogs have been out.
Hold on.
His vlogs have been out where he's been fishing up at Grenville, which is arguably the UK's #1 super water. There's a ridiculous amount of big carp in there. You're talking like multiple 60s, tens of 50s, and uncountable 40s. And the average, I think there's 2,000-ish fish in the lake, and the average size of fish in there is around 37 pounds. So, for a UK water, that is, it's outrageous, literally absolutely outrageous. And Scotty's in there, been having a few little sessions, having a few
I've done
fish.
three sessions. 2 of them have been successful. The latest one wasn't so successful, but like we were just saying, the time of year now, even though it's still prime, it is dipping down. You're on that slope, aren't you, where it's getting a bit cooler.
They've come out of spawning. They've lost all their weight. They've probably spent most of August and September eating a lot. Suddenly, they're no longer down in weight. They're probably bigger than they were on a lake like Grenville, where they're still growing. They're probably bigger than they were pre-spawning. And now they're swimming around like fat clouds, looking at piles of boilies, thinking,
Like there was a guy, so there's an area of the lake where they often frequent, which is a shallower area of the lake.
Right.
And when I turned up, unfortunately, I turned up quite late. I usually try and get there at 7 o'clock, which is the earliest you can get. And I've often seen fish at that time. Yeah. But on the latest session, I had to arrive at like midday because of work. But I got there, and then after speaking to the owner, Paul, and a couple of the other guys, a guy set up on this bank where he said that he saw a lot of fish, and they were doing exactly what you said. They were just sat there, not interested in anything.
About you could see him?
He could. I could. I would arrive too late, but he set up there.
What do you mean? Even jumping, he saw him.
Jumping, and also because it was quite clear, you could see him.
Right.
And especially from the watchtowers, you probably saw quite a lot. But Paul said, I think Paul went to see it as well, and he said the amount of fish there was a joke. And they were just there. And then the guy put some bait out, because it is often a bait and weight approach on there. You can nick them out, but it is often put some bait, they'll come at some point. Yeah. But you usually have to do a few nights for that to happen. And he put a load of bait out. He'd already done a night when I was there, did another 2 nights, I think. And it's just nothing.
What from previous experience, I've noticed, obviously we've spoken previously about August and September being a time when the fish are really, really eating. And I've sort of, towards the back end of September, as you go into October, I think it's noticeable on many venues, not all, but many venues, that they start to become more localised. They start to travel shorter distances, not getting round the whole pond from on a new wind and stuff like that, and start to sort of shy off of winds and hold around deep water, especially if there's access areas in the middle of the lake where it's difficult to access. And I know that's the case at Grenville. You've got it's a big lake, you've got pylons running over the water. There's definitely areas that you can't reach due to casting distances and stuff. I fish lakes like that in Belgium. I've seen it on Rockford. I've seen it on numerous venues that as you go into October, they stop. They're not willing to travel from one corner of the lake to the other corner of the lake in a drop of a hat. No. They're happy to be where they feel safe. They're not desperate to eat. Still a good time. One of my favourite times of year, because obviously it's really pretty. The leaves are falling, but it can also be the time when bait, like standard normal bait, can start to lose its effectiveness, and the time when natural baits or alternative baits really come into their own. Obviously, it's venue dependent. If you've got a venue that's carp only, for example, then maggots, sweet corn, casters, worms, a little bit of hemp, like very sort of watery baits that aren't too sort of claggy.
Obviously, in like a question from me probably actually then. At Grenville is boilie only.
Yeah.
Apart from when you use his mix, if you
Yeah.
buy Paul's bait, which is really good quality, he puts maize in there as well.
Yeah.
If you can't physically use any of that,
What would you do?
what
Well,
would
I'd
you
fish
do?
over a less
Yeah.
bait, you know, because
Yeah.
they will still eat boilie. There's still, you know, there's enough carp in there, isn't
There's
there?
ours, yeah.
Yeah. But I would probably crumb it up a little bit more and fish less. You know, you're not fishing for the big hits that you probably were. You can always put more out, can't you? But yeah, I'd probably go with less. Even a solid bag, I think if you're talking single hook baits or solid bags in the autumn, you've got much longer hours of darkness. Quite often the darkness hours are the best hours. And if you're trying to catch a fish in the hours of darkness, I think that the solid bag is much more powerful than the single pop-up.
Yeah.
Because it's got so much attraction in one pile.
Yeah.
Whereas the single pop-up, its visibility is its biggest thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if I was fishing somewhere like Grenville where you couldn't use an alternative, I would crumb my bait up to make it have more attraction for less weight, and probably fish solid bags around if you can reach. You know, you're fishing at long range at times there as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's that situation. But if you're fishing somewhere that's full of nuisance fish and you can't switch on to sort of alternative baits, then you know boilies will still be really effective. You know, it's all dependent on the venue. You know, if you're fishing somewhere where there isn't nuisance fish and you are allowed to use maggots, you are allowed to use sweet corn, you are allowed to those baits can make all the... When we went to Farlow's, do you remember that? We had a really good film there at the start when we first started filming the carp fix.
Putting maggots out.
Maggots cast a sweet corn.
Yeah.
You know, that October, November, if you're going to put lots of something out, it has to be something watery, not something heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did use solid bags. I did put less bait in.
Yeah.
His bait is quite crumbed up anyway.
Yeah.
It's quite a soft bait that he does fresh every day. So I was definitely on the right lines with what I was putting out.
Did you have fish near you?
So when I turned up, we looked straight out of the swim 3, which is, I've yet to put the next one out, but the second session I fished in swim 3, and that's where I caught from. Went back on Tuesday, and I was looking out with Paul from swim 3, because that's kind of where when you arrive, swim 3 is right there.
Yeah.
So it's immediate place where you just look. And we looked out, and literally straight away, there was a bigger fish not far out in swim 3's water, and then there was a smaller one that just like leaped out of the water, probably one that escaped out of the stock ponds.
Yeah.
Literally, the whole thing came out like a salmon. But that was like, there's fish here. There's no one fishing this area of the lake. No one's going in the cabin. This could be a good area.
Yeah.
And I also had to factor in the wind because it was a crosswind, so I wasn't having too much. If I went in there, which I did, there wasn't too much problem casting out. Whereas if I went into the like the northeast kind of bank, that's straight into the wind. So for me, putting rigs out a long way would have been very difficult.
Yeah, difficult. Yeah.
So it was either that or I go on the bank 33 where you had the wind directly behind you. In hindsight, I should have gone on there. Based on what I spoke about just before,
Should have gone where?
On that, you know,
on that
33, the south
on the
bank.
back of the wind.
Yeah, on the back of the wind. I should have gone in there based on Rogers going in 33. He's going in there for a reason.
Yeah,
like he knows what he's doing
really well there.
Yeah, there's going to be fish there, and we spoke about it. That bit down the island is when the sun's on there. There was a bit of a lull in the wind in parts of it. It's like that's where you would go if you were a fish.
Yeah.
And from what the other guy saw at the other end in the shallows, if there are fish there, that is the kind of the body of the water I should have concentrated on. But when I went onto that bank, I didn't see anything.
Yeah.
And I had to go on what I saw when I first arrived, and no one was in there. And time was ticking. By that point, it was probably 4 o'clock. It was getting dark at heart. Probably just gone 7.
Yeah.
So I had to make a decision. So I went into 3, but I didn't get him to put bait out because you can get Paul to put bait out.
Yeah.
I didn't want to go in heavy, putting 20 kilos out. I didn't want to do that because of...
You've only got 2 nights.
Yeah.
It's fishing slow. If it's fishing really, really well, you'd know they're eating.
Yeah.
But when you get there and no one's catching, the writing's on the wall, isn't it? A little bit. It's,
So I went in with a lighter approach. I did fish 1 on a solid bag. I'm just off where I kept seeing fish. It's actually where Bailey, when he was fishing on there, to the right of swim 3, fishing out. It's an area where Bailey caught some of the good fish.
Right.
And often in that swim, people fish over to the left. But Paul was like fishing to the right, it's good.
Right.
It slightly goes into the deeper water, but that's where I kept seeing fish. So I just fished there. But yeah, ideally, you need a few nights on there to get a good grasp
this
of
time
it.
you are going to have the odd blank. They start creeping in.
Yeah, this is the thing. I'm not fake. Going there and seeing what's going on. If I could go back next week, I would, because I'd have a much better chance of catching fish.
Yeah.
If like you say, if you can go on consecutive sessions almost back to back, you build up such a picture.
Yeah.
But obviously, I can't do that every week. I wish I could, because I definitely have a better chance.
You'd have a better chance.
But yeah, Paul gives you good info because he's there every day. But
and he knows it.
Yeah, and he knows it. So I always listen to him. But yeah, for the films, it is literally just watching those seasons change, and that's why I wanted to go there, because it's such a nice lake. Even though you've got the A1 not too far away, like the way he keeps that place is just immaculate.
Yeah.
And when it changes colours, and I'm just imagining it being really bleak, cold, and holding up a big 50, 60 pounder.
Yeah,
because that's when.
Yeah, this time of year it is harder.
Yeah.
But I would always say, if you looked at the average size of the fish to come out this time of year, quite often the big ones do put in an appearance. Between now and I think once you get to the middle of November, it's getting hard. It's getting properly hard then.
You know what the crazy thing is? I'm turning up. Yes, it's midweek, but it's like a Tuesday.
Yeah.
It's about 3 other people on 75 acres.
Yeah, lovely. Well, that's what you pay.
Yeah, that's
top
what you
dollar
pay
for. You're paying top dollar.
You are,
to fish for massive carp and it not be really busy. It's like a 48-hour rule, isn't it?
It's 48 hours, but if you don't go that often, so I go once a month, so he'll let you do a few nights.
Yeah, if you're not hurting people or in the way.
Yeah, but from November, I think he might have said from November or December, it goes much quieter. You can fish 4 rods.
Yeah.
And he said, not from the bait side, but he said you can pretty much do what you want.
Yeah.
In terms of probably how long you stay,
Right,
because he would probably, from a security point of view as well, probably prefer people to be there.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't go there.
People do tend not to fish so much through the winter months.
Whereas I'm kind of looking forward to. He said that this January just gone, that start of January was just crazy. And that's like a time I've earmarked. That first week in January is a time that it could, because around that New Year, Christmas time, it always
people are just not there.
So, but it's all like the weather's always like it's been all right.
It's always stormy, isn't it?
Yeah. So I'm quite looking forward to that.
Good.
Should we see if we've got some questions?
Yeah.
Right, here we go. Liam Banks. Was Liam the one that won the alarms? Or not? I think he might have been. I can't remember.
Not sure.
Evening, lads. Hope you're good. Daryl, what's your approach baiting and tactics-wise when fishing in silt? On my local lake, they seem to be feeding in the silt at the minute. Is there a common thing at this time of year?
Yes, a really, really, really common thing that that you'll notice at this time of year, that the shallower, the gravelly areas, they've been fished out all summer long. The weed will be dying back. The fish will be heading deeper. Naturally, the deeper areas on lakes are quite often the siltier areas.
Sorry, I'm just going to lower it down a little bit and just change.
Yeah.
Turn your mic that way. That's it. Just so
Yeah.
you see your face.
See your face. I was hiding behind the microphone.
That's all right, it's fine.
Yeah, no, it's something that you will notice at this time of year. The fish are. The thing is, people will say you've got gravel or silt, but there's a lot in between gravel and silt. As in, everything that's not gravel, people refer to as silt, which isn't technically correct. You know, there's sand, there's mud, and a lot of lakes will be mud on the bottom. Like, I really think of silt as being sort of broken down leaves and rotten, nasty smelling stuff. So yeah, don't get confused with everything that's smooth, thinking that that's silt, because it can be clay, it can be sand, it can be mud, it can just be the bottom of the lake. You know, it's not always silty. I think of silt as when the lead is really sort of sinking into it and everything's coming back really smelly. But going back to what you said, the fish will be using the deeper areas, they will be using the softer areas, and I do think it's at this time of year that they can really switch on to naturals. Not just, I don't even know the exact reason, but I would suggest that it's likely that they become more accessible at this time of year. A lot of in the summer months they can be well hidden, I think, and I really think that the fish that turn onto them because they're more readily available and obviously don't come with the Russian roulette chance of being dragged out of the lake onto the bank. So yeah, look to target the deeper, softer areas. Not necessarily really badly smelly silt, but like cleaner silt where your rigs aren't coming and your baits aren't coming back tainted. And as I've already said, as we were talking earlier, definitely look to alternative baits: sweet corn, maggots, caster, a little bit of hemp, boilie crumb. You certainly don't want to, on most venues, don't be piling in kilos of boilies. I'm not saying all venues, because ones where there's loads of nuisance fish, boilies and tiger nuts can still be the way to go because it's the only thing you can keep in the water. But on a lot of venues, ones with not too many nuisance fish, alternative baits are king at this time of year.
Cool. Joshua, evening guys, heading to Gigantica in early November for the first time. Would appreciate any hints and tips. Have you done November?
Yeah, I've done multiple trips to November, and unfortunately it's probably one of the most difficult months there, and for the very reasons that we just said. I've said that what you will not have any problem is hearing carp jump at night at Gigantica. They go absolutely wild. You'll wake up in the morning when the light comes on the water. The surface of the lake will look like a cauldron of froth where hundreds, if not thousands, of carp have jumped out overnight. That said, I don't know what I guess it is eating, like, not necessarily bloodworm, but there's other sort of like worms that are out, not like earthworms, but other worms that are out there in the mud. I think they really get preoccupied on them. It's also possible that they get preoccupied on baby crayfish, although I'm not certain of what time of year that actually happens. But I definitely in November will be going wild at night, and they will be difficult. It'll be one of the most difficult months to catch fish there. That said, I also know that the maize and the sweet corn really comes into its own at Gigantica in November. Solid bags, brilliant tactic there at that time of year. Not too much bait, and if you are going to put a bit out, make sure it's like a high percentage corn, high percentage maize, that sort of thing. Because I've heavy boilie approach in November at Gigantica is not the one.
Cool. Mick the Greek. He's been a member a while, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Mick the Greek.
Yeah, stalwart of the carp fix scene.
When fishing lakes with silkweed, do you find when leading up the spot is clean only to find in the morning the rig comes in with silkweed? Do you think this happens on the retrieve? And
Good
would
question.
this bother you when fishing lakes with silkweed?
Good question.
Do you want to? There's a
Yeah,
much more, but you get
exactly what you're saying.
You got it
Right. When you're plumbing and you're miscasting you go into your clear spot, you go in, you reel in, there's no weed on your rig. You cast out, hits the bottom, you reel in, there's no weed on your rig. You think it's a nice spot, perfect. You then settle on your spot, you cast out, lead goes down, you sink your line. At the moment that you sink your line and it properly sinks, there's no way of retrieving that without bringing back weed, because although your rig is on the clear spot, when you start reeling, you just drag along the bottom for a fair distance before it lifts up. So you're always going to bring weed in on the hook that will make you feel like you may not have been presented. But if you were casting onto that spot and reeling in immediately every time it was clear, the weed hasn't suddenly moved there. It's all to do with your lead hits the bottom and your line is up on the surface. So when you start reeling in immediately, the lead comes straight up off the bottom and doesn't bring any weed. And obviously the vice versa of that is once you set the rod, you're always going to be coming through that weed. So yeah, don't worry yourself about reeling weed in the next day. I wouldn't let that faze me as long as you're certain that you're on the spot that you found to be clear in the first place.
Cool. Chris Lines, Daryl, any plans to fish Grenville with Scott?
Well, he's asked, haven't you? You've asked if I can come.
It'll happen.
I went.
Yeah.
I think I went last December. I met a guy called Jeff at Gigantica when we filmed for Cartfix the first time at Gigantica. I met a guy called Jeff. Jeff took me there on a guest ticket for 4 nights. But it was the first proper cold snap of the year, and the daytime temperatures didn't get above 4 degrees. So I blanked 2 nights there with Jeff. Was planning to be there for 4 nights, but it was so cold and so horrible. I thought, I don't feel like I'm going to catch, so I might as well be at home. But yeah, I think we're going to try and go in November together, aren't we?
Yeah, I'm going to organise it.
Yeah, I want to fish there. It's like I said, we've already said it's ridiculous the amount of big fish, and not just big fish. Those like upper 30s that you caught, like those scaly ones.
Like the latest one I caught, he's never seen it.
Yeah,
and
there's loads of them, isn't there?
He said there's hundreds of them.
Yeah,
and there is.
Yeah, like quite often I go to lakes to target like 1 or 2 carp that look like that.
Yeah,
and then he's fishing for hundreds of them.
I said that exact words to Paul. I said, normally we go to lakes where you'll have 1 or 2 of these people want to catch. You've got all of them in here.
Yeah, hundreds. So yeah.
But we will film there, and obviously there'll be options to do some more filming. Obviously, I'm going to film there every month.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, November. Hopefully, we can get a session in there. Or you can definitely get a session in there. It's just need to organise dates. Right, Jack. Hello, Daryl. Fishing a small 3-acre syndicate in Brentwood, just off the A12. The deepest part is 28 foot. What would your approach be coming up to winter?
So 3 acres, is he?
A 3-acre, syndicate.
I find that lakes that have got deep areas like that in the winter will fish late. I would expect or hope to be catching fish from a venue that deep up until Christmas if it has a good stock. I would also expect on a lake that's deep like that for the fish to be showing at night. I fish Bundy's, which is quite a fair bit deeper than that. And I've also fished the Essex Manor, which is at 25 sort of foot deep, Gigantica 25 foot. Deep lakes, the carp jump. I don't know why that is, whether they're adjusting their swim bladders and stuff. So you should be able to locate a carp, a 3-acre lake. If you pick somewhere central, you're going to be able to see a good amount of the water. I would just look for where they're showing and fish with minimal bait where they are. Again, alternative baits, maybe a bag, maybe a PVA stick, that sort of stuff. But I would look. You got to remember the fish are going to be starting to ball up, like especially November time. They're going to be really balling up. On a 3-acre lake, you should be able to find them. And I would not worry about how deep it is. If it only goes down to 28 is not that deep. I would look to be fishing wherever they're jumping with minimal bait.
Cool. Steve Middleton, he's coming on one of the trips next year in July. 3 eels.
Yep.
Which will be a good trip, that.
It's doing some big fish now, 3 eels. Well, it always has. But did you see the guy that I shared his story today?
No.
He watched
Yes, I did.
He
caught an
83-pound common, a 65-pound common, and a 58-pound mirror, and big sturgeon, obviously.
Yeah.
The resident sturgeon that lives in Peg 4.
Yeah. Is that where he was fishing for?
Yeah. But he done much better than me. I didn't have any 60s or anything like that when I was there, but
yeah, he's done
really well.
Yeah, I think you got a little bit unlucky with the average size, probably, but
well. Terry was next to me catching all the big ones, wasn't he?
Yeah.
In 6.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Steve, hook patterns and hook holds location. What hook pattern with what type of rig? So PVA bags, Ronnie rigs,
I probably wouldn't use PVA bags at Free Hills or Twice Hills.
Oh no, this isn't
different question.
Yeah, it's not about Free Hills. I'm just saying.
So what's this question?
He's asking about. I'm going to reword it. Hook patterns and hook holes. So what hook patterns would you use with what type of rig? So PVA bags, and would you use Ronnie rigs with PVA bags?
You could do.
He's asking. Also at distance, casting 30 plus wraps. What rig is your go-to rig and hook pattern?
Yeah, but my rig doesn't change depending on how far I cast in. Like literally, I've got two main rigs. So I've got a pop-up rig and I've got a bottom bait rig. And I tend to use the Combi multi-rig for my wafters, my slow sinking hook baits. And I tend to use a stiff hinge rig for my pop-ups on a helicopter rig. And I use the same hook on both. So on the pop-ups, I use a size 4 wide gape or wide gape X. And on the Combi multi-rig, I tend to use a size 6 wide gape X's. Like I say, no, I don't really chop and change for hook patterns, and the main reason for that is I genuinely believe that shape and style of hook is the best for hook to land ratio. Not the most aggressive. If you want to play with hooks that are faster turning, potentially turn more pickups into bites, a long shank pattern of hook will convert more pickups into hooked fish, but I believe a wide gape will convert more hooked fish into landed fish. So yeah, I'm quite happy to have a fish potentially spit me out, or potentially drop the rig without getting hooked. What I don't want is to hook a fish and then lose it, because if a fish spits your rig out, I think there's half a chance it comes back and has another go and might not get so lucky the second time. Whereas if you actually stick the hook in him and lose him, I don't think he's coming back. So that's my sort of thought process. I use wide gapes for everything because I believe they're the best for hook to land ratio. And the two rigs that I use, unless I'm using a solid bag. If I'm using a solid bag, then I fish a short little braided rig inside the bag. And if I'm fishing a zig rig, obviously I fish a normal style zig rig. So I've got 4 rigs really in my locker. Solid bag rig, a zig rig, a wafter rig and a pop-up rig. And I don't think you really need too much more than that.
Cool. Hope that helps. Have you fished Pettits? Is that what you did?
I've never fished Pettits, no.
Okay.
Which is the big fish lake at Norton.
That's the middle one, isn't it?
It's the one on the left as you drive through the gate. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a chap asking. He's on Peg 12. Anyone got any ideas? But if you've not fished there,
the best guy to message would be Rob Burgess. Obviously,
Yeah.
he's up there a lot. He's fished that lake quite a bit.
Even the bailiffs,
yeah, there's loads of features in there. But Rob's had a good go on there this year. And done all right. So it'd be worth dropping him a message.
Yeah. James Burke, if you were fishing a deep water 30 foot and you had located the area they were in, would you be looking for any big changes in depth or the type of spot or both?
Yeah. I don't know the lake. Like 30 foot isn't that deep at this time of year and the next month or so. It's not that deep. It wouldn't scare me. But at the same time, I don't like just fishing on the bottom in the middle of nowhere. I do there's this Nick Hellier saying that's always stuck in my mind, and he says, when there is nothing, something is everything. So, if you've got a really obvious feature, then that's great, But if you haven't got an obvious feature, if there's a little bit that's like a foot higher, a foot raised lump, or you're getting a better drop out there, or it starts to come up, a little change, something that's not just, when you just drop it in a desert, if it's right under the fish, then that's great. But fish are magnetised by features, and they will come and investigate features. So, yeah, look for any sort of changes in depths near where they are. Look for harder spots. And if it is just a desert out there, it is just a desert out there, and you're fishing under the fish, and make the bait your feature. But yeah, I don't like it when it's just mud or flat silt, and I always feel much more confident when I find something, or a better drop, or a change in depth, or it's near a weed bed, or it's near a snag. It's like when there is something, the fish come there anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Billy McGee, I think you pronounce his surname, is first live and a new member on Cartfix. Quality, love the app. Keep it up, lads. And
Thank you very much.
Thumbs ups.
Brilliant. I'm glad you're enjoying the content.
Yeah, hopefully you enjoy it and you enjoy all the videos. The big carp stories are definitely worth a watch. And what would be your video go-to video to watch? One that you've done or any?
I think there's quite a few good ones.
Yeah.
Obviously, we had a really good session at Burners in February. We like an absolute smasher.
Yeah.
I think the Farlow's film, the first one we did.
Yeah.
I think there's loads of technical, especially for the autumn. I think that's a really good film.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Wazing films.
I mentioned those today.
They were particularly good films.
Yeah.
When you remember, you've got the whole time you want to just peruse that content as and when you want,
and you could download them.
The big carp stories, you could just have them you could listen to them as a podcast.
Yeah,
you don't need to watch them.
No.
You can listen to them.
Yeah.
But the films obviously you need to watch.
Yeah. Cool. Steve has said also would love to see you and Pecky carve up Grenville. Maybe one day.
Well, one day, yeah. Get us in the old cabin, Scott.
Yeah, in spring.
Any time.
Yeah.
In the summer, August. I'd rather be in there in August.
Yeah.
I think August is. I really think August is a.
Yeah, well, that's when I went in there in August.
I think it's an underrated month. Loads of people on their family holidays.
Yeah.
They're all like fished out from the spring as well.
Yeah.
It's really red hot, and quite often July can be slow.
Yeah.
And that people drift away, and then they.
Yeah.
August.
I think that's why I got in the cabin because everyone was on holiday.
Yeah.
I turned up and he was like, "Yeah, let's crack on."
Get in the old cabin.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
Right, Carlos. Hello, mates. I like fishing fluorocarbon mainlines, fishing with a bait boat. What's the longer distance you recommend to use it? And if for distance you have to change to braid, is this a good idea using a long leader, 10 metres or more, or fluorocarbon? What's the best leader knot? We can break that down.
Yeah, I can break it.
I had to really translate.
Yeah. So the fluorocarbon for long range using a bait boat, I think once you're getting over 130 yards, once you're like 130, 140, 150, you should probably be using braid if you're allowed. And I say that because for bite indication. Obviously, mono fluorocarbon has less stretch, but there's certain elements of stretch. So I would say, once you're over 130, you're probably better off using braid. And if you are going to use braid and you want to use a leader as such, I personally prefer a short leader. So I will use a fluorocarbon leader, I will use a leg core leader. I will tend to use like just a normal length, like a 4-foot leader. And the main purpose of the leader is to protect the fish's flank, so it's not coming into direct contact with the braid. No other reason. I don't think a longer leader is of any benefit. Going to be coming through your rings, being a pain in the arse. You're going to get braid behind it. It's going to catch on the spool and stuff. All stuff that you just. It's not doing you any favours. It's unnecessary. So I would use a full turn Albright knot with the fluorocarbon or the mono doubled over on itself, and then pass the braid through the loop around itself. Not a 4-turn. You'd probably want to do a 7 or 8 turn because you're going through with a single piece of braid and making sure that the braid exits the fluorocarbon loop in the same direction that it came from. So look on YouTube for the Albright knot, but that's the knot I would recommend, and I would also recommend you use a short leader rather than a long one.
Beautiful. I'm really not great with some names.
What's the question?
Good evening. Fishing on the river lot, you were using wide gate double X's. Did you hand sharpen them? Do you always use sharpened hooks?
Yeah, I never cast out a hook without having touched it, and well, that's not true. Sometimes I cast out the Kamakuras without touching them, but a lot of the time I'm still touching them. But with regards to those wide gate double X's, I use them a lot for what I would call my big game fishing abroad. Like when I'm fishing on the rivers like that, when I'm fishing at Orient, and what I tend to do is just scratch the inner side of the point with one of the jag stones. I prefer the green one. You'll see me using the red one most of the time because I snapped my green one a little while ago and I haven't gone and I haven't been and got a new one yet. But I prefer the green one. And literally, I just dragging it very gently across the very inner edge of the point and checking it through the eyeglass. And I do 2 tests. One is I stick it in my thumb, like in the skin, to see if it goes in easily, so it's not sort of like I'm not having to force it in, it's not denting the skin to go in. And the second is a nail test, but I'll be very, very careful with the nail test because obviously you could blunt the hook, but it is a good test because obviously skin on your finger, sometimes it's drier, especially if when you keep pricking your thumb with the hook point, it gets like almost like scar tissue and goes a bit hard and crusty, especially when you've been outside a few days and whatnot. And sometimes your hooks won't feel as sharp, whereas your nail stays the same. And just check it. All I want it to do is catch rather than slide. And as long as it catches, and it doesn't take a lot of force to sort of stick it into your skin, then it's good.
Cool. Chase Hutchinson has asked, how do you tackle a very snaggy venue with multiple dead trees in the water? And another question, have you ever used the double lead system when fishing braid at distance?
No, I've never fished that double lead system. I know what he's talking about. Mozza did it in one of our films.
At the island.
Yeah, I've never actually done that, but I know when you're fishing, when your boating rig's out and you're fishing at long range and you're fishing super tight, you know, obviously your line could be coming off the bottom like this otherwise. So I can see why they would do it. You're creating what I would call a safe zone around your feed. You're putting down like like 5-6 foot apart. So you like lower one lead down, that gets you bonk, and then you sort of just tighten it out and lower the second one down, so that you're creating a flat area. So yeah, it's a pretty simple concept once you've done it a few times, I imagine. But how would I? You know, obviously any lake with lots of falling trees, they become the fish, as I mentioned a minute ago, they're magnetised by anything in the water. So when there's nothing to congregate around. But when there's a fallen tree, the fish will congregate around that. But you just have to find somewhere where you can fish close to it, but safely. You know, you want to be like, for example, when Dan fished that thinking tackle with me on a lake called Mirabel out in France, he had a fallen tree in the lake out in front of him, and the fish that were around it. But he found when fishing with braid, everything it's so instant with braid. Do you know, like when the fish go mental, everything happens instantly, and the line can pop, the knot can pop. You know, you can rip the hook. I find if you're not fishing stupidly far out, if you're fishing short, I would much rather fish with 20-pound nylon and not give an inch. So you pick up the rod, hold on tight, rod takes on the curve. You've got that massive, especially at 80 yards, you've got a lot of bunginess, but not enough for them to get in the trees.
Yeah.
Because you see with carp fight, it's like it's a few thrashes a tail. It's like, and then the elastic pulls them back.
Yeah.
It's like that sort of thing.
You're using the line to its...
Yeah, it's giving. Yeah, whereas if you hold on with braid, quite often something will give. You'll tear the hook, you'll break. But if you're fishing at long range, let's say you're fishing over 100, you're probably still better a braid. And what I find happens when you're at 100 plus is the belly in the braid is your shock absorber, because it's heavy with water. It's sort of bowed down for it.
Yeah.
And when you hold on, those surges are semi-absorbed by the bow in the line.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're fishing short range with braid and fishing locked up, you're asking for a lost rod and snap up.
Yeah, not ideal.
No.
James Burke, when would you switch back to higher track pop-ups from Match the Hatch?
The trouble, well, as soon as you go on to higher tracked hook baits, you know, you're going to have a lot of trouble with bird life. The water on a lot of lakes will be clearing around now as the water cools. A lot they go, and the coots and the tufties turn up. I think Match the Hatch is a great tactic, sort of up until now. You know, maybe the end of the month. You know, early November, and I think it probably can pay to sort of have something a bit more attention grabbing as you get to the back end of November, early December. But you can catch a bright hook bait at any time of year. You can catch a Match the Hatch hook bait at any time of the year. It just depends on what. I just think that, especially now, with with the rise of the Ronnie rig, previously the Chod rig, the stiff hinge rig, the last 2 decades have been pop-up obsessed, and the fish have never been fished for as much as they are now, never been fished for as much as they are with bright pop-ups, and I do think that they swim past them thinking, yeah, I don't think so, not today, mate, not today. So yeah, they are good. The reason they're good because they're always there on show, and eventually one just grabs it, but at the same time you will be getting ignored. So in my opinion, fishing on the bottom with not so bright hook baits is an edge in itself these days, because everyone is fishing bright pop-up. So yeah, don't always go that way. If you think if you've got presentation, you can fish on the bottom. I think that's an edge.
Cool. Josh Garrity has asked, Darrell, my lake has a dense population of swan mussels. I've been thinking about bashing them up and incorporating them into the mix. What's your thoughts? Will it work, and why?
Will work.
I remember when Mark, Danny at Gigantica crushed the crayfish up.
And he does it with the zebra mussels as well.
Does he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a
Got
really
a big old sledgehammer. And
there's a really, really old video of John Wilson catching carp on swan mussels. Yeah, really. I'm talking 30 odd years ago, like him hooking a big swan mussel on a float on an old estate lake.
Oh yeah, with his
it's probably on
cane
YouTube.
rod.
It's like,
yeah.
So fish definitely will eat the meat. Whether they're actively eating them in the lake, I don't know about that, because obviously they're big. But when they reproduce, they can't be big immediately, can they?
No.
They must grow.
Yeah.
So I don't know, or I've never experienced it in my fishing where I've known a fish eating swan mussels like readily. I know they will eat the meat inside, and I know that carp absolutely love mussels. Like in canals with zebra mussels, in lakes with zebra mussels. You think how sharp they are, and yet the fish will pull them off of whatever, because they're really attached to things. So they must really want them to put these razor sharp things in their mouths. They must really enjoy eating them. So yeah, it will definitely work. Your only negative will be if there's eels in there. I reckon it could be quite an eely bait. But yeah, definitely. If they're easily for you to get, easy for you to smash up, do it. Give it a go. Yeah, I think it'll work.
Cool. Carp Geezer, have you ever fished Home Fen, and how would you approach it in October?
I've never fished there. I know Rob Burgess went there recently. Again, it's anywhere that's got that number of big fish in it is going to see some. It's expensive to go there. It's full of big fish. People are going to be taking that damn seriously. Those fish are under hardcore pressure. I don't know what the rules are, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what you can and can't do.
Maybe we need to get Robin for a podcast.
Yeah.
Can answer a few questions.
Yeah, he could. But yeah, if you can use natural baits, I would use natural baits at this time of year. If you can't, I would definitely edge on the side of caution. But I can't imagine you're not allowed to use corn. Most lakes you're allowed to use sweet corn, and straight corn in October, November is a very cheap and efficient way to go. Like fishing straight corn with yellow pop-ups or straight corn with plastic corn over the top. Yeah, for as long as I can remember, like it's a deadly tactic, straight corn. Like it's very easy. It's a way of putting loads of like visual attraction, like wow, like here's some bait, without any sort of chance of filling the fish up. It's just skin and water, really.
Yeah.
And they do like it.
Yeah. Peter Thorne, what's your thoughts on algae blooms? How much effect do you think it has on the fish?
I think I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but like when you have an algae bloom, it stops the light penetrating the water. Like if technically it's the same as putting dye in. Do you know how like fisheries put dye in to kill weed?
Yeah.
So when you have algae, the light can't penetrate, and if there's a good amount of depth to the lake, what will happen is the weed will suffocate, the weed will die, and all of the natural food that was living in the weed will suddenly become available to the fish. You'll see the fish will be very active, they'll be fizzing up, and it will be really hard to catch on normal sort of stuff. Bayswater, historically used to, before they started pumping the water, always have an algae bloom in August. So no, it happened in July, a big oil algae bloom. The weed would die through August, and everyone stopped catching, but the activity levels would be through the roof. And people say, oh, it's too early for the maggots. Load of bullshit. Like, it's like maggot bags, like an egg-sized maggot bag with tied to the lead on a lead clip, with a single rubber maggot on the shank and 2 real ones hooked on, lobbed out to wherever they were, was deadly. Absolutely deadly on at that time of year. What you'll also notice after an algae bloom is the deeper areas of the lake will become rotten. So normally I would say target the deeper areas in the autumn. But if you've had an algae bloom, the deeper areas will have a lot of decomposing weed. It will be a bit rotten down there, and quite often the fish will be very reluctant to feed in my opinion, feed in the real smelly, decomposing stuff.
Cool. Chase Hutchinson, what's your opinion on hand sharpened hooks when fishing hit and hold with braid in snaggy venues?
Good question.
Do you use your hand sharpened hooks on the Orient?
I don't fish hit and hold at Orient. You know, when you're fishing to the trees at Orient, I fish with a really slack clutch because I'm on the boat. The boat's moving. You don't want to drag the lead off the spot. And I find with braid, when you fish hit and hold, you just rip the hook out. Yeah. You know, I just let them run into the forest, just let them go, and then I just go in there with the boat and I play them inside. I just go around the trees, and there they are. And if they're quite often when they go in the forest, the water's only like a metre deep, and I just jump out the boat and I start playing them from my waders. It's very hard to play a fish in the forest in the boat because you every time you pull, the boat spins, and you like constantly facing the wrong way,
losing battle.
But to answer the question, I wouldn't fish with kamakuras or like hooks where you've sharpened the face of the hook when fishing braid to snags, because hooks that are sharpened like that are more prone to cutting. They sort of like can slide under heavy tension. So going back to what I said I did with my wide gate double X's, I just scratched the inner side with the file, with the stone, just to make the very, very, very tip sharp, but not create a blade. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend fishing hit and hold with braid with normal sharpened hooks, because yeah, it's a recipe for disaster.
Okay, Billy Hipgrave. I'm currently fishing 35 to 40 foot deep irrigation reservoir in Essex, silty in the middle with gravel spots as you come up the marginal shelf. Some weed, but not much, pretty featureless. Normally fishes well until the end of November, apparently. Not very busy, have it to myself most of the time. 150 fish in 7 acres. Don't show themselves
Sounds
much.
Like the rise.
Don't show themselves much in the colder weather. What would your approach be?
Well, I'd be looking to like fish in the middle of the lake. You know, if you're not seeing anything, the middle is always a good starting point in the autumn going into winter. The middle of the lake will be a great starting point, but I'm not having it that they don't show. I am not having that. You know, that is.
You're not looking. They will show.
There will be times when they're not showing, because they don't show every minute of every day. But at some point in a 24-hour period, especially in the autumn and especially in the dark, on a deep lake, I would very, very strongly suggest they will be showing. And if it is where I think it is, then you will find them if you look. If you look in the night, you know, just spend a bit of time listening, you know, listening for where they are.
If it is the lake that you know of, if you know what the baiting restrictions are.
I don't know.
But how would you approach from, like, if it isn't, it's any lake?
Well, the Essex Manor, for example, is probably the closest that I can compare that to. The Essex Manor was only 7 or 8, 9 acres, but it was sort of 25 foot deep in the middle. And most of the fish that I caught October, November, I caught them on half a bottom bait and half a pop-up put together to make a wafter, because I didn't have wafters, but that's what they were. Like, they were basically wafters. And I would cast them to where the fish, it was all silty and muddy out there, like muddy, like not bad. Yeah. I would just, with a 1.5 ounce lead, I would just cast to where they'd been jumping, and I'd wait for a better drop out of a few casts. So I'd like flick, no clip, just flick, and then the one that was like more of a I would leave that one, and I would put a pouch full of 10 millers over it. One, because it was close enough. And I think at this time of year, 1, 2, 3 spoms is plenty. Like, if you landed 2 on the money, that's plenty of bait, you know. Just even one, if it was like smack on top, you know, or a stringer, or like, just fish out into the middle where they are. They're going to be balled up. If you're underneath them, you've got a chance.
Good luck. Mark Rose, fishing a 60-acre lake. It's 26 foot deep in the middle. Plenty of weed in places and shelves. Loads of tension bream. 200 carp up to £30 mark. What would your baiting approach be at this time of year?
We said, first of all, there's a lot of weed. Weed's never good for it as a cold water venue. You know, weed, they quite often just sit in it when it starts to go cold. So that's negative. Lot of bream and tench. That's going to wipe out your naturals, alternative baits. So you're going to be restricted to what you can really use. You know, boilies and tiger nuts are going to be the normal standard go-to. But yeah, looking for the central areas of lake, noticing the patterns, as in this time of year, they will be balling up, they will be showing at night, and they won't be moving too far. I often find that they'll sort of decide where they want to be, 1, 2 areas in the lake, and you really need to focus on these areas where they're holding up. And if there is too many nuisance fish, I would stay away from the marginal shelf. I think they'll be probably out in the middle, looking to exploit the central areas with boilies and tigers if there's lots of nuisance fish.
Cool. On a busy, so this is Liam Banks, and he did win the alarms, he said, from that last one. On a busy day ticket venue with not so strict rules, what would your biggest few edges be?
Not so many rules.
Yeah, so I guess you pretty much do what you want.
Yeah, so tiger nuts, no one really uses tiger nuts that much, generally, because no one's sponsored by tiger nuts, so they don't get like a massive marketing like plurge, right?
Could we make that possible?
But they are sponsored by tiger nuts. But they are one of the most effective carp baits known to man. You know, they just are, and you don't need. Everyone thinks, you need to do some fancy stuff. You need to cook them in cola, cook them in brown sugar, add some garlic. Yeah, you can do all of that, but you don't need to. You know, just as boiled in water, left overnight, they're dangerous. You know, so yeah, massively underused bait. And the other thing that people do with them is they tend not to fish them straight. They put them into a mix, like hemp, this, that, and other. And I've always found that if you've got the right thing, what they really want, it's best just to fish that. So if they're on boilies, just fish boilies. If they're on tigers, just fish tigers. So yeah, tigers are one of my number one go-tos. Day ticket, club lake, syndicate lake, wild venues, doesn't matter. They're the real deal. And as we've said already, you know, if you're allowed maggots, if you put maggots in a fish tank and casters in a fish tank, worms in a fish tank, and you put them next to boilies and pellets, it's just uncomparable. You know, the natural food will always be the one that they go for first. So yeah, if your day ticket lake allows the use of natural baits, they are expensive to use in any form of quantity, but so are boilies. So yeah.
Cool. Eamon has asked, what anglers do you like to watch or listen to? Do you watch many fishing?
I'm terrible for this. You got to remember, I've been working and making fishing videos for 15 years. I've been a sponsored angler for 20 years. I fish hundreds of nights, more than 100 nights every year. I really don't watch that much content. But I'll tell you what I did watch recently. Someone said to me, have you seen the Nash Yeomans in Belgium series?
Yeah, you mentioned this.
Because it apparently was like someone said it's totally different to what a lot's out there. So I watched the Dan Yeomans in Belgium series recently. Shot really well, like unique, very uniquely shot. Dan Yeoman's great character. Like, yeah, great series, little series of films that well worth checking out on YouTube. Other than that, it's more. I watch stuff when it's when I'm going to go to a venue that I've like. Say I'm going to go to a venue, and I know there's been a video made on it. Then I'll like
Watch a bit,
yeah. So I watched. What did I watch? I watched Monster Kart when the boys went to Twas Hills before we went. So I watched that. I listened. One thing that I really, really enjoyed a little while back with the two Stokesy podcasts. Do you know, like he done one for Corder and then he done one before that. I think it was for. I can't remember. It was like there's another. Is it? I can't remember what podcast it was, but that was like something that I really enjoyed. But yeah, I got to be honest. I really don't watch a lot of content. I tend to watch through my own films. That's really sad. Like I want to see how it's been put together.
Yeah.
Because obviously I'm at making films, and then I want to see how it's been put together. So yeah, I've got to be honest. I don't really watch a lot of other stuff.
No. Cool. Sandhurst. So Chris Noble. Hi guys, I've just got back from a trip to Sandhurst Lake. Any plans to do any filming on any of the Yateley lakes at all?
Well, we've just got a film coming out from Swan Valley. So we've been to Swan Valley recently, made a film there, caught a few fish. So that's obviously in Yateley. We haven't been to Sandhurst for Carp Fix yet, have we?
We haven't, no, because we have to pin it down a little bit. Swan Valley will be out on the 27th of this month, so a few weeks.
Yeah, Sandhurst. Sandhurst is definitely somewhere we should go and make a film at some point. I've done Day Ticket 40 for Corder there. Again, I went there and absolutely beat it up on Tiger Nuts, and then I think quite a few people followed suit. I know Elliot went there afterwards. I know that Dovey went there afterwards. And I think they give it a pretty good scalping on tigers, and as a result, loads of people went, and then I don't think they're allowed anymore. So I don't know. I don't think maggots are allowed there, and I don't think zigs are allowed there. So I feel like I'm being disabled before, like it's like taking away all the biggest weapons. It's when everyone has to do exactly the same thing. It's very hard, on these really super pressured venues. If you're only allowed to do a select handful of things, the fish are always fished for with the same stuff. They just avoid it, and it can become very difficult. But we will go there because there's an insane stock of carp in Sandhurst. Like for the size of the lake, I think there's 400 or 500 carp in there, something like that.
Nice fish as well.
Yeah, really nice.
Right, James, we'll do a few more questions. James Burke, can you talk through step by step how you sink and mend your main line and what you look for?
Good question. Like one of the biggest things that beginners do wrong is not pay enough attention to sinking their line, correcting the direction of it. They don't pay enough attention to how careful they are not to dislodge the lead from its original position when taking the rod from the water's edge back to the rod rest, the alarm or whatever. So starting from the cast, you make your cast, you feed it onto the clip, you cushion it onto the water surface, you take up any slack that may have been out there from the impact of the clip, you feel it down onto the lake bottom. And it's really important that when you're feeling it down, that you're not pulling back, because if you're pulling back as the lead's sinking like that, as it hits the bottom, you could make it bounce back towards you. So you want, when you're feeling the lead down, you do want to be moving the rod very, very slowly towards the lead, so that as it hits the bottom, the line goes slack rather than causing the lead to bounce. From that point, you're likely, if there's any form of wind, and there usually is on the surface, the first thing to do is put your rod tip into the water, take up any excess slack, but being very, very aware that as you're taking up that slack, that it's suddenly going to become not too slack. So you want to be very cautious as you're taking it up so it doesn't go too tight. As you feel the tension start to build, like you can feel some tension, and then take the line just above the reel, rod top into the water surface, judging the tension with your fingers here away from the rod, and watching the line sink from the lead end to the rod tip until it comes to the middle point and breaks the surface film. From there, I'm going to take the tip out of the water, look where it's pointing. Obviously, it's going to be pointing downwind from where you've cast. I'm going to hold the rod in the opposite direction, again, holding the line still at the reel, just to judge the tension. mend the line so that it's until it's pointing exactly where you cast or is the best that you can do. And then from there, open the bail arm, not the clutch, take the rod back to the rest, put the bail arm back over, slowly tighten up until you can feel the tension, and then put the bobbin on.
Lovely job. Neville Rice, I guess that's his son, is it? Might be on.
It might be Toby on.
Yeah. What hook bait would you use that crayfish can't break?
I've not really done loads of fishing on venues with crayfish. I have fished some. A lot of the venues I fish in France have got some crayfish in it. Again, tiger nuts, one of my, tiger nuts would be my first port of call. You'll find that when you use boilies, the crayfish will go straight to the boilies, and they will whittle them down. On lakes where they're absolutely festooned, they'll even eat the plastic. But yeah, my first port of call will be tiger nut hook baits. Then it'll be plastic hook baits if the tiger's not doing the do. And if they're still mowing up the plastic, then I would make sure that I put a lot of feed out. If they're really chewing on your plastic, it's because they're obsessed by it, because there's nothing else out there for them. If that's happening, I'd feed much heavier. I put a lot more bait out there, like sacrificial lambs, so that they're leaving the plastic, the tigers alone long enough.
Have you seen the quarter ones that are coming out, the boilies?
I saw them in the office the other week. Yeah. On the counter flavoured ones.
I think I saw Rob had some. I've not actually touched them, but they look all right.
Yeah.
Like they could be a good edge.
Yeah, no, I think I've never really fished anywhere that's like really bad. But
that's for when it's real bad.
When it's really bad, that's what I would fish with a rubber hook bait.
Yeah.
Over loads of bait.
Yeah.
I listened to Tom Lorraine's podcast on the Corder one the other day, and he was talking about the North Met, which is now absolutely riddled with crayfish.
Right.
And he was talking about like baiting with hemp and boilies, and the boilies are for the crays. To keep them, because you see what happens. They get a boilie and then they take it and then they eat it. So they're not, once they've got one, everything else is okay.
Yeah.
So you need to put out sacrificial lambs.
Yeah.
Put out a few boilies for the crays and then fish your other one over the top.
Right, Barry Layton. When fishing particles on silt bed, what length rig would you use?
Say again, sorry.
When fishing particles on a silt bed, what length rig would you use?
That never changes. Like literally never changes. It's like they say in the winter you need to refine your rigs, or when you're fishing in silt you need to fish longer rigs. But I would rather fish a helicopter rig in silt and push the bead up so that the lead goes into the silt, but the rig still stays the same. Long rigs give the fish too much time to spit the rig out. My rigs are generally, the booms are 5 inches. On my stiff hinges, my booms are 5. On my combi multi rigs, my booms are 5 inches. So yeah, I keep my hook links the same. But if the bottom is soft, I change over to a helicopter system and I fish with the bead up a little bit, allowing the rig to sit on top of the silt rather than get buried into it.
Cool. Right, last question from Tadej. When would you use putty on the knot on your multi-combi rig?
Well, I've started doing that all the time now. So for a very long time, I was just using silicone, very neat. Now I've just started using putty because I think it's helps pin that bit to the bottom near the hook, so it's not likely to be just like lodged off the bottom. It's more likely to be down onto the bottom. And I also think that it helps to a degree to start the turning mechanism of the hook. So yeah, I tend to use putty now.
Putting that silicone on is ag.
No, it's not.
It is. I try and what you say, use your jumper. It's like it always goes over, and then I can't get it back over the other side.
You can only go one way.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
But you put it through your jumper, think, oh, that's enough. You lift it away, and it's gone all the way over, and it's like, start again.
Yeah, you're using the 0.7 or the 0.5?
I can't remember.
Yeah, so you might have the 0.5, which is more difficult.
Yeah,
but,
maybe.
If you put the puller tool into the loop, obviously that then butts up against that part of your hand, the backhand, and then so obviously as you're pushing like that, and as you're pushing your back of your hand, you've got something to lever off of, and you want to make sure the tags on your knot are decent, like 5-6 mil,
Yeah.
so that they're folded back.
Yeah.
And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to use the silicone to hold those
Yeah.
tags against the
I
knot.
think I just use putty.
And just a little bit of spit on the knot, but not on the fingers or the tubing.
Yeah.
Just put a little bit on, like a tiny bit of saliva on the knot.
I managed to do it. It's fine, but it is the most annoying bit of that.
Just
rig.
use putty.
Just use putty.
Just use putty.
I don't know why. Have used putty on there, but
Yeah.
I like to do it like Daryl Peck.
Yeah, I've started using putty like just this year.
Everyone, this putty sales are going to go sky high now. Everyone's going to buy putty.
Yeah.
Right, that's it.
All right then, ladies and gents. Well, thank you very much for joining us on the monthly Kart Fix Live, and hope we've answered all your questions. Hope you're enjoying the content, and we'll see you next month.